Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Ever wondered what happens when a Zoomer who grew up on the Clone Wars,
a millennial Anakin defender,
and a grumpy old Gen Xer walk into a cantina to talk Star Wars?
Then we've got the podcast for you.
Star Wars Generations is a place for fans of all backgrounds to come together, talk about why we love the franchise, and what we can learn from each other.
With so much new Star Wars content coming out, we take a deep dive into all of it. We talk stories and characters, what we learn about the Force and the Empire, Republics old and new, and how each story adds to the larger picture.
Besides episode-by-episode coverage of the new shows, we've been going back to watch the movies in release order. We talk about Star Wars novels and video games, along with fan content and cosplay.
And with each episode, we're just starting the conversation, and we hope you jump in. We'll read your feedback, answer your questions. We've even had full episodes dedicated to questions raised by listeners like you.
You can find us under Star Wars Generations on your favorite podcast app, or by going to theethicalpanda.com. May the Force be with you.
Now this is podcasting.
Hey there, true believers. Andy Nelson here from the Marvel Movie Minute podcast with the rest of the team.
Pete Wright, Kyle Olson, Rob Cabasco,
And Matthew Fox.
This is the podcast where we dissect the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time, exploring every detail of this epic superhero franchise.
In our season looking at Iron Man 3, we're going to mix things up a bit.
That's right, Rob and I are your guides, but instead of our usual minute-by-minute format, we dive into 5 minutes of the film in each weekly episode.
It's a totally new approach, but one that still allows us to explore all the depth and detail that makes these movies so special, even if Iron Man 3 isn't all that special.
Hold on, that's where you're wrong. Extremists, Shane Black.
Yeah, would you like to look at the Mandarin and Maya Hansen? Mm-hmm.
So whether you're a die-hard Marvel fan or just love deep dives into movies, there's something for everyone on Marvel Movie Minute.
Suit up and join us on this epic audio adventure. You can find us at truestory.fm or by searching Marvel Movie Minute on your favorite podcatcher.
Because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, every minute is packed with excitement.
Enough said.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Adrian Moment on TrueStory.fm. I'm Ocean, and I'm joined as always by the Rocky to my King of Sting, Count of Montefisto, the Master of Disaster, Apollo Creed, Jim Pullen.
Wow. You know, I'm just not that lyrical to be able to come up with some good rhymes that he could easily come up with, but thank you.
Yeah, well, he had look, that was only 3 of the nicknames he had. He had a lot of other ones.
He did.
So there was quite a few more. And it was, since the character was originally based on Muhammad Ali, he had to, of course, have a whole bunch. But anyway, so then how are things going with you, Jimmy?
Things are going good, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. How about you?
Things are going well. So then it's Christmas time, and if you are listening to this on the day that it released, Christmas was yesterday, as this one will release on December 26th. So, and I was thinking about Christmas movies, and really some of my favorite Christmas movies of all time. And one of them that is not typically thought of as a Christmas movie is Rocky IV.
The Soviet Union has officially entered professional boxing.
This is not just an exhibition fight. This is us against them.
He would like to compete against anyone who is qualified.
Drago is the most perfectly trained athlete ever. Whatever he hits, he destroys.
He could have stopped the fight. He could have saved his best friend's life.
I'll never forget you, Apollo.
But now, the one thing he can't do is walk away.
Has the fight date been set yet?
December 25th.
Where?
It's in Russia.
Are you nuts?
Miss Balboa, when will you be going to Russia?
I'm not going to Russia. I don't know what you're talking about.
He's had one professional fight, and one man is dead.
Tabibi, He's going to have to kill me.
Why can't you change your thinking?
Because I'm a fighter.
You can't win!
Rocky 4.
Now, let me tell you why this is a Christmas movie, Jim. So the when I first saw it, so I'm going to start with when I was young, much younger. So Rocky 4 was released in the end of November, really Thanksgiving weekend in 1985, and I saw it in theaters. I saw it in theaters at the time, and I was in 1985, and I was young. I was. You know what? I'm not even gonna say how old I was because that makes me sound old, even though I was young. And I was, we were for Christmas, around that time of my life. For Christmas, we would go to Muskogee, Oklahoma, which is where my grandmother lived. And we in this case is my mother and I. And if you've ever been to Muskogee, Oklahoma, you know that there is nothing to do there. So.
At least back then. I mean, maybe there's something going on now, but
I would imagine there was more going on then than there is right now. I bet there's nothing going on in Muskogee, Oklahoma right now. Anyway, and so we were there, and I saw it. I was doing a Christmas break, so I saw it, and I saw it in theaters, and I saw it on Christmas Day. And
nice.
So it was like the after the afternoon and everything of opening, well, the morning is opening presents and everything and all that, and then you eat the food and all that, and then Christmas evening I went to go see a movie. So I saw Rocky 4 on Christmas Day, and during my experience there, I'm watching the movie and enjoying it. And I'm gonna jump to one part and then we'll skip back. But the final fight. At the end with Rocky versus Drago, when they're doing the press conference, and in the press conference they announced that they are, the fight's in Russia and it's on Christmas Day, right? So it's on Christmas Day, and so I was like, what? Today is Christmas. So in my head at that point, when the fight started, I went from watching a movie experience to I'm watching a pay-per-view experience. Ooh. And I decided this fight was live right now because they said Christmas. It is Christmas, so that means this fight is happening now. And that is how I enjoyed this movie. And for really quite some time, this was my favorite Christmas movie because whenever I saw the movie with everything about it, I still thought of Christmas. And how it was all Christmas time, and they had the presents and the trees, and there's all the Christmas stuff going on around that time frame. In the movie, all the other Christmas tropings, the tree decorations and everything else they have about the trappings of Christmas time. But that is what I thought of. That's what I thought of, and this for me is still in my top 5 favorite Christmas movies of all time.
Nice. Okay, so I got a couple of questions. Would you guys normally go to a movie on Christmas Day? Because I know with some families it's a tradition, and I've only ever gone to one movie on Christmas Day. But for you guys, was it a tradition?
Around that time, yes, it did become one. It was really the tradition that I think that we developed is that we went to a movie during that Christmas time because you have a break from school, you're a kid, and I'm sure my mom was like any other parent was like, well, I got to figure out something to do with this kid. So,
right.
Let's take him to a movie. So we did definitely see a movie on Christmas time. I have seen quite a few movies on Christmas Day. But yes, that it did become and to call it a tradition makes it sound more like it was on purpose. And I just think it just sort of happened. It really happened organically that over time we decided we would watch movies on Christmas.
Okay, nice. So does that happen now for your guys' household?
Not so much because the same thing isn't really there. The impetus for doing that. I think that it is still fair to say, definitely around Christmas time we'll watch movies. During that whole break period when the kids are out of school and all that, we'll do that. But the Christmas Day itself, especially now when I got older, we made a bigger deal about the dinner, and so there becomes a thing of where. After the presents and everything in the morning, and even that got delayed. So, because when I was a kid, back in my day, this is how we did it, right? We got up and immediately went to opening presents because if the presents weren't being opened right away, I was going to start a riot, and there would have been like bed burnings and all kinds of. I mean, it'd have been a track. There would have been like casualties. If we hadn't just gotten straight to the gift giving, right? So, because I was like, there are presents under that tree. I see them. I want them. I need to have them right now.
I think that's true for most houses.
And then everything else happened after that. Now, as what my definitely from the influence, a large influence of my wife became that Christmas turned into, well, now we just get up in the morning and have breakfast first, which to me was just the first time I heard that I was like, wait, so you mean the presents are just sitting in the tree and we're sitting over
Just
here eating some
the
food?
presents are staring at us.
Yeah, right. The presents are right there. Like, why are we eating food? Like, we're just, clearly we have our priorities out of whack. But so we eat breakfast first, then opening the presents, and then also because I was the only child, there was more concentration on me, and it was definitely a faster process with my kid. I had multiple kids, and sometimes we had other family members and a lot of things around, so the whole opening of presents part takes longer. So then that tape would take longer, and then for dinner we invite all these people over, and so the process of getting everything ready after the gift giving, usually, you've already eaten a big breakfast, you do the gift giving, you're not hungry, you're doing some cleaning up and everything. And then they were doing all this preparation for Christmas dinner. So the day of Christmas now does not get the same focus of a movie, I think, because we have more crammed into it now than when I was a kid. When I was a kid, it was like, we're going to open some presents, we're going to eat some food. And then it's like, well, now what? I guess we're watching a movie.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. But but it's still like, there's opportunities for some movies around the Christmas time, and it's not necessarily Christmas Day.
Yes, around the break. Yeah. So then on Christmas morning, do you eat breakfast first, or do you guys go?
It's kind of changed up a little bit now that the kids are older. I mean, earlier it was try and be like kids who don't go downstairs before 6:00. I got to go downstairs and kind of get the coffee ready and stuff, and see if the whole Santa thing happened, and then come back upstairs and be like, all right, okay.
How long did you keep them on the Santa train?
Till like, I think Molly was 8. So it went along for a while. Zach, being the oldest, knew what was up a little bit, and we were like, hey, don't.
Okay. So you kept them until 8, right?
Yeah, we kept lying for quite a while.
Yeah.
It's a straight up lie.
No, it is. I understand that. I had my wife thinks it traumatized me because I would not, we never told our kids Santa Claus was real.
Right. No, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. And I remember even thinking, because even before we were having kids, we were like, oh yeah, no, what do we tell them about these things? And it was like, well, no, let's go along with it. And then as it was happening, it was like, man, anyways, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is,
but I mean, but to play off of all of that. So like when you were growing up though, was Santa a thing when you were growing up?
Well, it was until I was about 5. I started asking questions around then. And then when I found out that it wasn't, I realized that I had, like I said, my wife says, which, I can do the psychoanalysis there of this, but that it affected me in a great way, because at that point, I think that it was, the TLDR of it is, and part of why I wouldn't do it with them is that it was the first time that I realized my parents would lie to me.
Okay.
And then to learn that at 5 is kind of like, I feel that's too early. Because like by the time you're a teenager, you figured it out there. It's like, okay, they're not always going to tell me the truth. But when you're 5, you still believe that everything they say is the absolute gospel. When I found out Santa Claus wasn't real at that point, I was like, what else in the world can I believe in? So it was me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
right, let me get off the couch now. So I was like, my psychological damage. Just getting back to the Christmas movie that is in fact Rocky IV. One aspect of it that I've been thinking about, it is obvious in this movie, it has a very straightforward hero-villain trope. And that is part of what makes it a good Christmas movie, because any good Christmas movie is going to be pretty simple. In it, Rocky is obviously our hero.
Right.
And then, but Drago is obviously our villain. But then I think, and I was going to ask you your thoughts on this. Is Drago really a villain?
I think visually you're told that, the character Drago is the villain, especially right out of the gate, right? I mean, he's there, he wants to fight a champion, and you're looking at him as if he is the villain. How dare you? You're coming here and you want to fight a champion, and you're a nobody. You haven't fought anybody just yet. Who do you think you are? Right?
Well, he wants to fight the champion, not just a champion.
Right. The champion.
Yeah, the heavyweight champ of the world.
Right.
And he's never had a single professional fight.
No, nothing, other than, the Olympics. Right.
Yes.
So, visually you're there. You're inherently being told that, he is the villain, but really he's Russia. He represents Russia. And at the time, every movie that had any kind of Russian undertone, that's the villain. To me, he is the visual representation of the country as the villain.
The distinction that I'm at least looking at, or I've been thinking about now that I've seen this, I don't know. Now that I've seen this movie 15 times, I think I can talk about it a bit more. There's the symbolism of what he is, the entire Cold War perspective of it, and where it is a very overt American propaganda Cold War type message of, United States versus Russia.
Right. Yep.
But in it, whether or not Drago himself is a legitimate villain, there's this situation, yes, he does represent different things, but at the end of the day, he's an amateur boxer. He's never lost as an amateur. He wants to fight. He wants to go pro, test himself out. You get a little, I would think, get a little cash, but then it's Russia and the Soviet Union, so he may not be getting that much money.
No, he's getting some extra potatoes.
He's a professional who is still somewhat representing his country, but he himself, he's just a fighter, and that he's just trying to, prove that he is the best in the world. And so then, but is that then, all of the geopolitical ramifications at the time do definitely paint him to be a villain. But then in effect, is that really his fault? Because he's like, look, I'm just trying to win. And so if it's the geopolitical part of things that make him the villain, that's one thing. But then the other part is is he just right guy in the wrong place, I guess wrong place, wrong time, where he's he just happened to be the best one they had right there. They do a little bit of the villainy with him at the end of the first fight with Apollo Creed, which we'll definitely I want to dig into that a bit more. But outside of that, it seemed to be that he was really being castigated into a role that he didn't really ask for, or I don't know that his character deserved, because he didn't really say anything.
9 lines or something like that, right?
Yes. No, in the entire movie, he says 46 words in 91 minutes. And,
nice.
Yeah. And honestly, he didn't, I'm trying to remember if he said much of anything before the first fight, which I guess let's just talk about that. So in the first fight, the fight with Apollo Creed, right, there is the press conference they have beforehand. And even in that press conference, he's not talking. It's all his wife, which is played by Brigitte Nielsen, and then the main Russian propaganda guy, which I don't remember that character's name.
Slobodov.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Exactly. Well, hey man, it's USSR. You have to work your way up however you can. And so, but and he doesn't really say anything. He just is he's just there. They do the little demonstration about whatever he hits, he destroys, and all that's great, and so, but they, in the first fight, when they castigate him, how is he, as he comes up in the risers of the, for the first fight, which is already crazy, because that no boxing match starts that way. You don't have it like a ring below ground that just gets risen at the end with,
right.
Here is our great villain in this thing, and he's just kind of looking around with all the lights and everything, and the James Brown singing like that, and Apollo Creed's dancing around. He's like, hey, this is not like a regular fight here, is it? All this promotion. And so, but even in all of that, he basically just stays there, keeps his calm, doesn't really do much of anything, and just, is just, being a fighter. And so I think that there's an aspect of his character where it's, I guess the argument that I'm wondering is, can you say that, he's not really evil? He's just misunderstood.
Yeah. I mean, if you're taking a look at him, he's definitely just wanting to be that boxer, right? He wants to be known as the best of the world. And, the USSR is using him as a platform, and so he's misunderstood. I think, for me, one perspective I don't really understand, and maybe you can help me out with from, your boxing historian aspects. I don't believe that I've ever seen an amateur boxer get that much attention. Against.
You mean right out of the gate?
Yeah, just right out of the gate. I was trying to think even what some great Olympic boxers received as right after the Olympics, but most of those guys, it took 2 or 3 years before they even got a chance for a big time fight. And even though the fight against Apollo is an exhibition match, I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember thinking anything that I ever saw in the 80s, 90s, or even now. So I was wondering from that perspective.
Well, nothing that fast.
Yeah.
There is the Olympic ones. Oh, while there were some that like with Sugar Ray Leonard, honestly, even Evander Holyfield in the cruiserweights when he came out, because he was a cruiserweight. Roy Jones Jr. light heavyweight when he came out of amateur boxing, and really also the things with Muhammad Ali and I don't remember if Joe Frazier did amateur. George Foreman did, and George Foreman, right? With those names, and those are the names I'm just going to kind of throw around as far as that they were big deal amateur fighters that then weren't turned pro. They were not given title shots right away. Part of that was, their managers and their management skill was like, hey, you will be champion one day, but you're not ready today. So let's not put you in too deep of a water before you get used to how professional fighters and how professional fighting works. And so I think so as far as the historical context, no, that wouldn't be something that would normally happen. But then effectively though, this one, it is slightly different in that it is an exhibition. It's an exhibition against a former world heavyweight champion who has been retired now for, I don't know, I think in the Rocky University, been retired for about 6 or 7 years now. And then
I think he said 5.
Is 5
I think
years?
it was
Okay,
5.
yeah. So he's been retired for 5 years, and his exhibition bout, and the champ challenged him. Effectively, because he did not, Drago and Drago's people were not, hey, we want to fight Apollo Creed. They said we want to fight Rocky Balboa. And then Apollo Creed challenges them, and then Rocky's not answering. He's like, new number, who this? And then so it then becomes, okay, we now have a big name, because Apollo Creed is a big name. And there's a part of this from the fight perspective where it's like, okay, so the way Drago just basically destroyed him was overwhelming. It was to the point of where you have that amazing entrance of all that stuff that goes on there, and then they boxing around, everything kind of is fine like that. Apollo's moving and stuff like that. He does a few hits and everything, and then the second he takes one punch, you're like, okay, let's stop the fight. It's like you're like, we're done. All right. And so that it was just overwhelming. And the aspect of it too is that, there is in the movie universe how Apollo Creed is viewed differently now from Rocky 2 to now. Because one of the things about Apollo's career was when Rocky, the first movie, happened, he's undefeated. And so he wins that fight. He's undefeated. He wins that fight. He stays undefeated. He fights a few other people. He stays champion. And then Rocky 2 happens, right? And then in Rocky 2, he loses by 1 second, and 1 second only. As far as I can tell, after that, he never fought again. And so that means then effectively his record is, I don't know how many wins he had right now, but however many wins and one.
Right.
And then that one was a 1 second knock. That was that Rocky 2 fight. And that was it. And so it is a thing where when they say how in Russia, like when Brigitte Nielsen's like in Russia, Apollo Creed is this well-respected fighter, and we really love him, and it'd be great to have a victory over him. That's a really true statement, because really up to this point, no one has ever beaten him in a ring other than Rocky.
No, that's a very good point.
Even 5 years retired, if a fighter with that type of a resume comes up to you and says, I want to fight you on your first fight, well, of course you're going to say yes. Especially if you think you can win, which clearly, yeah, that wasn't even a question mark, right? So I think that the combination of events, while I do not think any of that would happen in the real world for a multitude of reasons, but one of the main reasons is to have a fighter in the scenario of Apollo Creed. Given your resume and your name, you could have fought anybody,
right? Especially in only 5 years, right?
Exactly, it's only 5 years. You don't need this. You could find some other top 10 guy or whatever that you think is on the up and coming and say, you know what, I just want to test myself again. Like you could have gone wholly different routes than this, where you fight some dude that you've only seen a picture of and have no idea about anything about him. You haven't seen any of his fights, you know nothing about him. So that's not. So yeah. So you're already at a point of where it's like, we're going to suspend disbelief that you would even go this route. And that you're a professional fighter and you'd fight someone that you've never seen fight before. And let's face it, the only time you ever did that in your career didn't turn out the way you thought.
Right. So what do you think Apollo was trying to prove in that moment, though?
You mean by fighting Drago?
Yeah.
I think they do a good job of portraying that in the movie, where it is effectively he feels like he is not important, not loved enough. He's the has been, or a has been, and he doesn't have a real challenge. And there is a part of that which I do get. There is the thing of where the arc of the character in two. So in 1 and 2, he is the champ, so that's all going on.
Right.
And in 3, even though he's just the ex-champ, in 3, he then in effect takes on Rocky's, training Rocky and everything to then get him back to the title. That did not mean that he was going to be his trainer from then on. It just meant that I was able to get you to the point that you could beat Clubber Lang, and got him to that point. They won that fight. Everything's great. What's his challenge now? What's the goal now? And I think that he just didn't feel that he had one, and he saw that on the television and decided, hey, this is here is a new challenge, and I want to try to tackle this mountain.
When he was explaining it, and really in that heartfelt moment of like, I don't have anything else. I gotta fight for this. I want to fight for me. Everybody's going to look at me to defend the country, right? Is one of his other comments too, that, he just wanted to pick it up. Nobody else was going to do it, so I'm going to do it, type of mentality. But I mean, I
don't think that's true. There wasn't nobody else going to do it. Someone else would have done it.
Right. That's what I was about to say too, because it was like somebody in that moment, 5 years, sure, but like you're saying, could have picked somebody else if you wanted to come out of retirement to start boxing again. To me, it's believable for the character. Do you believe that it's believable to the character that he would have stood up for the country, but also for really what he was saying? Like, I have nothing left. Like, I want another generation to hear my name and breathe my name.
For the country, no. For himself, yes. A lot of times people talk about fighters coming back for the money and all that and everything. And I mean, sometimes there is that. Like, Joe Louis was broke at the end of his life, right? Yeah, he came back for that. But for the most part, I think that it's like a drug. It's like, to be in a ring, and then thousands of people are cheering for you and screaming your name, even just the walkout when they announce your name, like that feeling that fighters get and everything from that. There is in very few things in life, when you leave the sporting arena, is there something like that where that would happen. And so I think a lot of him, he wants that back. The fact that people would talk to him and tell him how much they respect and care for him and love him and all that isn't enough. He needs that immediate adoration, gratification, and then also the feeling alongside the feeling of, I need to conquer the next challenge. He just didn't have a next challenge, and he was looking for that.
I completely am in line with you on that, especially with, some of the recent events of, some of the celebrity fights that are going on. I know in one interview, the Mike Tyson, Jake Paul fight, Mike Tyson was talking about more of I want to be able to prove to myself that I can do this again, and get back into in shape and all that, which I think was great for him. And kind of to Apollo's point, like mentally, like, I want to be able to prove that I can do this, and I'm going to prove to everybody else that I can still do this. And then you can't remove the competitor from the situation, no matter where you retire or what you remove yourself from. I mean, I could go on as to why I ended up starting playing lacrosse again, as like 45-year-old guy who left the sport for a few years and then decided to play it again. It's just it's the camaraderie around everybody, and then the competitiveness. You don't get that in the office.
No,
there's different competitiveness there, but it's not the same. It's just not the same.
Let's talk about the ring entrance.
Yes.
The song by James Brown, "Living in America," which was great. It was, interestingly enough, his first top 10 hit in 18 years. He basically hadn't had a hit since, oh goodness, it was like 1967. With a song called "I Got a Feeling." And when I say a hit, I'm talking about hit on like the pop charts. On the R&B charts, he's always the man. But it was like his first big hit in a while, and then the entertainment of that song, all the dancing around. When you do that type of an entrance, it's more like you are expecting this to be like, it's an exhibition. We're just going to do this. We're going to come out with a sparring match. Not a big deal. Yeah. It's not. This isn't a real fight. We forgot to tell and I'm going to use air quotes here, villain, that this is not a real fight, because he He was like, no, this is a real fight.
It was lost in
It's-
translation, right? I mean,
it really
exhibition.
was. Yes, yeah. They did not explain it in the appropriate Russian that this is not a real fight. This movie was the first time where the ring entrance felt like a training montage. That it was like a thing of like I was now getting ready for the fight, and at least look, if you saw any of the trailers for this, you knew that Drago and Rocky had to fight. The only way for that to happen is that, Apollo has to lose this fight. But for at least 45 seconds, you really did kind of start thinking like, you know what? I think Apollo could win.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was looking good too, right? He was completely cut, glistening like he just had the best warm up, and he's upbeat, and he's got that smile as he's dancing next to that big gold eagle that's bringing him down.
Yep.
And you got all the fireworks going off. It was, I rewatching this now as an adult versus whenever the last time it was that I've watched it. I know you mentioned you've seen it 15 times or so. I definitely don't remember how many times I've seen this. It's been a minute since I've seen it, but that whole entrance just blew my mind because this movie came out mid 80s, right? 87. And I still have yet to see an entrance like that for any kind of major fight in UFC, boxing, or even really WWF, WWE. I mean, there's been a couple of really cool entrances, but nothing like that. You had James Brown, you had all those dancers, you had all those people up in the ceilings doing things that weren't necessarily a regular aerial dance thing that I remember in the 80s. I remember seeing stuff like in Vegas and whatnot later on in the 90s. But I mean, it was just it's a spectacular entrance for an exhibition match.
Yeah, I can give you one. There's one entrance that I saw in real life, and that was on February the 5th in 2005. Corey Spinks fought Zab Judah, and they fought in St. Louis, Missouri. And Corey Spinks is from St. Louis. He was Corey Spinks he's Michael Spinks' kid. Nelly brought out which, I mean, you have to be alive at the time, I think, for most people to even know who Nelly is. But Nelly brought him out, also from St. Louis, who had like a song that was big a deal at the time. And it was the biggest raucous, like the song like that and everything, the crowd, the music and everything like that, the way Corey Spinks danced the whole way to the ring. He did a whole thing where he started doing some gyrations when he got to the top of the ring that made the crowd actually move from one side to the other side. Like one side was like yelling at first and the other side was going back and forth. It was the most amazing ring entrance that I've ever seen in real life. And it was the closest I've ever seen to something like this crazy. And also, he also lost that fight. But Corey Spinks, after this amazing ring entrance, he did get he got knocked out in the 9th round by Zab Judah. But it was an amazing ring entrance. It was awesome. And so that's the closest. That's the only thing I've ever seen that's anywhere near it in real life.
All right. Well, I'll definitely take that from you because I know that you've seen a lot of fights.
Yeah, no, it's all a lot then. And so so. The aspect of that, when you have that type of a ring entrance and then all the printing and the primping and the, doing the thing with his hair and all that he cared about, all the pomp and circumstance, they announced Rocky out of his corner and everything like that to do all that for the first fight. That then after that, when it becomes a fight and you are really like yelling, stop the fight after the first punch, and the thing keeps going, I think that it's, I guess I think about it, and this seemed to be the fight itself just seemed to be, we're going to sacrifice a beloved character in a sense to give us our Rocky formula, which is they lose the first fight, they win the next, the first fight's a loss, second fight is a win. And that it was like, well, this is what we're just going to do. And so because they took someone that had, that should have been a great fighter, then, maybe can go out on a shield in a sense, but then just made it to the ridiculous point of where he not only loses the fight, which is, reasonable, but is killed.
Right. Yeah. Just dead. Yeah. And you're right. That does set up the formula right away, because that's now the next logical fighter for Drago is Rocky. That's what they're going to ask for. And that's what they ask for immediately. And therein lies the formula, as you were saying. Now you have this belief that, oh dear God, Rocky's smaller than Apollo. You're gonna get thumped. You're gonna get whooped. and you're going to die in the first round.
The last thing I will say then about one of the things I'll just correct the Apollo Creed is that his record was going into the fight 48-1 with 46 knockouts. That's his record. Yeah.
You know, I was gonna say, I thought it was something in the high 40s. I wish I would have said something now.
Yeah, it's insane. You know, so the fact that a fighter with that type of a record would need to resort to something like this is the other part that's ridiculous about it. But you know what? Hey, the ring entrance was great. The song was amazing, and then you had all of the other stuff about what happened in the fight.
He gets pummeled on the first hit.
I mean, yeah, and we definitely should talk more about that fight later on in the episode. But would you like to hear more of the Adrian moment? Our supporting members will hear a bonus segment at the end of each episode. And for this week, we are going to discuss, did Rocky IV end the Cold War?
If I can change,
Я думаю, что каждый тоже изменился сегодня.
and you can change,
Вы можете измениться.
everybody can change.
Каждый может измениться.
One other thing about this movie is it is I think one of the best versions I've ever seen of taking the tried and true trope of all sports movies, and that is the training montage, and ramping that up to 11.
Hell yeah.
While I would normally say, what did you think of the training montage? Rocky IV is a special kind of movie to where the question is, which is your favorite training montage in this movie?
Oh man. I mean, it is a hard one to pick. My favorite is got to be the build up to him running up to the mountain. You know, he's already there in Russia, and you know, he's starting to feel like he can do it. Now he's climbing that mountain, right? And it's just it's your stereotypical Rocky. It's what you expect, but it's just the buildup that you see, the sweating and the uncharacteristics of his training environment, especially versus, you know, Drago's training environment being all scientific and special, and he's the strongest human being. It's impossible for anybody to beat him. And here's Rocky putting on his ox yoke, and I'm just getting all yoked up myself, just thinking, you know what? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to find something like a railroad tie, and I'm going to put that on the back of my neck, and I'm just going to start climbing up hills and stuff. Like that
was basically a railroad tie. Yeah, and he's going up he's going up the mountain on the side, or that's just in the snow with the rail tie, and he kind of falls and stumbles a bit. Yeah,
right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just the whole movie, it sets the precedent of what training montage should be for any sport movie. It's just, it really hits home, because I love that he's going into it with minimum equipment. He's just going right into a barn where they're just feeding fire and just like, let me put these rocks into a big old net and just start pulling on them, and just doing the craziest things that you could possibly imagine. Where, you know, like today you could go to some CrossFit place and yeah, you could hit a sledgehammer on a tire, but no, not Rocky.
Yeah.
Nope. He like set the precedent of, this is the uncharacteristics of training with whatever you have, rocks, wood, whatever, chopping wood in the snow, running with these big crazy boots as a Mercedes is chasing you. Who cares?
It doesn't matter. It's all good.
What about you? What was your favorite part?
That one was when you're talking to, I'm trying to remember. I think that was the running up the mountain at the end. That's the one where they were playing Hearts on Fire, because there's really, and sadly, not sadly, sadly is the wrong term. Amazingly, because I've seen this so much, I know which song it is by their names, and so that was the Hearts on Fire, because the other thing about that one was, especially when it's going up the mountain at the end, that's one right before the fight. And so in that one, they do another thing that I thought was interesting in the Rocky movies, of a real good job of showing both fighters and their training. and that you're providing a juxtaposition of what they're doing in that, where Rocky is basically returning to his original Rocky 1 roots, where it's like he has no money and he just is like, well, I can't afford weight, so we're just going to take some rocks, or I'm just going to chop some wood. I can't do anything else. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna chase chicken. And it was also interesting where when they get there, that Paulie's like, well, how are we going to spar? And Rocky's like, well, I don't really think I need that. Which is kind of, it's an interesting thing when you think about like a fighter at that level. It is kind of like, well, do you need to spar? So it's like, I just thought that was a little interesting throwaway. Anyway, that scene was great. I like the juxtaposition. It is of course, when they do the big reveal that Drago is cheating because he's taking steroids. I know.
No way.
Exactly, because Rocky got that body all natural. And
80s
so
steroids and Russians? What?
Exactly. What? Yeah. Who'd have thunk it? Yeah. It's never happened. So anyway, and that scene, but I like the juxtaposition. I thought it was great. I really found that. So I guess the main thing that I wanted, look, Rocky is big. Rocky 4 is one big training montage, and so therefore I think all of them should get their due. Whereas, as I said earlier, Living in America really is just a training montage for Apollo Creed to get to that fight, because quite honestly, he was dancing around and working out enough that I think maybe he did. He had a little bit of workout on the way in there. The one that you had was Hearts on Fire, which was the one at the end. They also have one, oh goodness, was with the Burning Heart one, which is the before. So there's two training montages when he's in Russia. There's the one where it's Burning Heart, and that's one where he first starts running and he's doing all the stumbling. And then, he does all the stumbling, and then that's before Adrian shows up. And then Adrian shows up, and then there's Hearts on Fire, where he's succeeding and he's able to get everywhere and, do everything. So those two. Then there is the one which I do think is interesting about the whole Burning Heart part, which was the scene when they land, they being Paulie, Rocky, and Duke land in Russia. They start playing the song, and it's like, you've basically turned an airplane landing into like a little, you're getting me in the mood for the fight training montage. And it's like, it's just an airplane landing, and it's like, I'm like, so I'm supposed to, it's like, wait a minute, you're getting me ready for the fight, but it's just, they're just now showing up, right. And so there's that one. And then all of that preamble is to what is really my favorite one, which is the one where they play No Easy Way Out, which is the scene when, after Adrian tells him he can't win, Rocky decides to take a drive to clear his head. And that song is such a perfect 80s soundtrack song. I mean, really, a lot of the whole thing is just, if you like 80s cheesy soundtrack stuff, this is it. This might be the magnum opus of 80s soundtracks for training montages ever made. But anyway, so No Easy Way Out, it's perfect 80s song, and really it also goes to lets you experience the emotions that Rocky's going through, where he is at first he is being reminiscing and loving like the early challenges of Apollo and the training he was doing, and how things were simpler and life was great back then, and how he and Adrian first met and they were hooking up and dating, and life was all full of promise. And then he's reminiscing when they finally achieved that promise and that goal and everything. They become heavyweight champion, they get rich, they get money, they get married, everything is wonderful and beautiful. Then they defend, then they have a little bit of stumble, then he takes out Clubber Lang, and then it transitions as well back to the whole idea of like, he now recognizes that he has to face Drago, who he is then equating to this, killer effectively, and that his, any fear or trepidation he has of that, because he relates it back to his first real defeat, which was Clubber Lang, because Clubber Lang was the first guy that really got him, that really beat him, and beat him that badly. And then he's equating to that and dealing with this fear and apprehension. And then all of that is wrapped into a fast-paced, fun, exciting song with a bunch of flashbacks. And I was like, you've given me tons of exposition without someone actually talking. And I was like, this to me is the greatest moment of this movie.
One of the reasons why I like it as like a low-key, quote-unquote training type montage is, we as humans, we've all been there. We've all gotten into a car, throw on some of your favorite tunes, and think about something that either just happened, or a conversation that you're going to have, or something that you needed to work up the courage to be able to do. We've all had that moment, and visually in the movie. Sure, it's not in a Lambo for myself anytime that I've ever gotten into a car and thrown in some music. It's not a Lamborghini. Unlike Rocky, he's got a really cool car that he's doing this in. Like we've all been there. We've all done this.
We're not doing it in this cool for cars Rocky is now.
Right. No, it's not. But still, I mean, we've all done it. And it's one of the reasons why I think it's like one of those low key moments that somebody could just let that pass by. Somebody might even want to fast forward through that because there's no talking, like you're saying. And it's just a flashback. And it's just like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. I'm just going to, no, it's a great moment. It's a great moment. It's not the best moment, like you said, of the movie. It's not a pivotal moment of the movie, but it's the way that it is shot. I think it just is. It's something that we can easily relate to because we've all been there.
Outside of all that, and believe me, I can talk about these training montages for days. But there's
we can have like a whole nother show just about.
Yeah, I could because that's the movie. The other aspect of it, given the division of the two training montages between the song "Burning Heart" and "Hearts on Fire," I think it's "Burning Heart" and "Hearts on Fire," the two songs, where it's the first half of when he's in Russia and then the second half, and how it is really split in half by, in this movie, the very obvious Adrian Moment. And so I would never want to have a movie about our namesake without discussing what her moment was. And in this movie, which is interesting in some ways, given that in all of the Rocky movies, at least the first four, which I will admit that existed, her role in this one is much, much less than it is in the first three. And so you still have, in effect, the Adrian moment of, when she comes, when she finally arrives in Russia and then tells, when she arrives in Russia and says that I will be with you until the end, that's like, okay, well, here's your Adrian moment. That's her coming into, that way he will now feel that he can get his mind right and actually do what he needs to do, put his body through what he has to put it through, and actually do all of the work and everything it's going to take to then finally defeat this, what we've been told is this unstoppable monster of a force of a monster. And so I think that that is the obvious part of it, but it's small and understated versus other things, especially given her whole role, because effectively she just tells him that he can't win. He goes to Russia, then she's like, I'm with you to the end, and then that was it. And it is, while it is important and pivotal to the movie and to his arc, I found it to be, I thought her role should have been bigger, or at least bigger commensurate to what had been in the first three movies.
I think it's big only because it's not as big as all the others. She doesn't have as many lines, definitely. She's a little bit more open and cheerier than some of her cold, dark self, like in the first and second one. But it's big at the moment that she shows up. As soon as there's boots on the snow and he sees her, like you're saying, that is the Adrian moment. And that right there is the big moment, because last we saw, she's like, whatever, dude, you're done.
Yeah.
I'll see you in a body bag when you come
exactly
back.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't say that, but I mean, it definitely gives like that cold vibe of like, yeah, I'll see you when you're dead.
Yeah, exactly. I'll collect the life insurance. It does come across that, and I did mistake what she said. She said that she was going to be with him no matter what, and it was like, no matter what, and then they do the kiss, and then that's it. And so, in these movies, I do a lot of times look for, especially given our show, what the Adrian moment is, and then the Rocky movies. I mean, they're all going to have them. It right. was on the scale of the Rocky movies, this was the most just. Oh, I don't know. It feels like straightforward afterthought thing. Like it felt more painting by numbers. Like we have to reconcile this for him to move on. So then we're just going to do it in this 20-second piece, and then let's get back to the montages.
Right. Yeah. Let's just visually show that she's here, and now all of a sudden, just like the stock market, now he's running up a mountain. It's like, I mean, all the visuals are there because it's you get to the peak, and yay! Well, how'd you get up there? Oh, she showed up. Oh, okay, cool. All right, let's get back to fighting.
Yes, let's get to the montage. All right, so okay, you know what? That is true. Let's get back to fighting. I think one of the final topics, or one of the last things I want to discuss with this, is how it portrayed the sport. So I have a lot of thoughts, what is your opinion? How well do you think Rocky portrays the sport of boxing?
From an entertainment perspective, I think it does a really good job. And I'm not a trained fighter or anything like that. And I understand that, there's significant differences between the style of any fighter or any camp or anything that they're doing as they're coming into a fight. But to me, what I really like is the portrayal of two different camps. And let's not talk about how some of the hits look like they actually are getting hit really hard in the portrayal of the physicality of the sport.
Well, they are. I think that is something to talk about when we talk about the portrayal of sport. They are. They are. When they shot these films, they're hitting each other.
Really?
Yes.
But this is one of the only ones that they were hitting each other, because in the Rocky 1 they weren't hitting each other. It was.
I don't know about
throwing
1
punches big
in 3 and on they were, and part of that was because of. I think a lot of that was because of Sylvester Stallone's a little bit nuts with this, and then the people he picked, because Mr. T was a boxer
right,
and Dolph Lundgren, he was a kickboxer, so then they could, they not only could do that where they're actually hitting each other, they would be comfortable with that happening.
Right.
Because in Rocky 2, for the most part, he's doing everything with with Carl Weathers, who is an actor. Right. He's not here to get punched in the face.
No.
He's not about that. Right. So that's not going to be this. He may do it some here and there, but he's not really going to be, he's not really going to be all in on that. Whereas
he had to look pretty for Star Wars and stuff. So,
well,
and everything else he was doing.
Look, that man has to look pretty for everything he's doing. He was pretty Happy Gilmore with one hand. So anyway, So once 3 and on, when you look at it, the other fighters that he has in these movies, they're all professional fighters, or either are professional fighters or were professional fighters. So they would be okay with the fact that, like, yeah, we're gonna hit each other. They're not gonna. I don't think they're hitting each other hard. I mean, well, that's not even true. There is one where Dolph Lundgren, put Sylvester Stallone in the hospital. He hit him so hard.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So hit him in the chest and went to go to the ICU. So they are hitting hard somewhat here and there, but I think that's what it is. From 3 on, they are hitting each other, and I think that does add to, for example, why the fight scenes are better. From the later on, because you can do a lot of stuff with choreography and edits and jumps and all that stuff can be great. But at the end of the day, there is a lot more you can do if they actually punch each other.
True, and it makes the sweat look better on camera.
It does when it's flying off the face. Yeah,
rather than just like trying to push the sweat off your face as you're whipping your head by, as you're clearly getting thrown a punch, but you're dodging it, and it's not going to spray the same way. No, that's a very good point. I didn't realize that they were actually making connection, but the visuals of it would definitely support that. And it's this. Can we talk about the visuals of it though? Like
absolutely,
how dark the ring is, or how light the ring is. It's very bright, and everything else is dark around it. I love how they got that, and I know that Sylvester Stallone is.
Which ring? You mean the final fight scene, or the
the final,
the one in Russia, the one in Russia,
the one in Russia. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
The just normally when you're watching like a pay-per-view or even just any fight in general, normally the ring is lit up really well, and you can't really see beyond like maybe the first couple of rows of celebrities. And but just the way that they got it, and just I don't know, just the lighting on their faces and everything as they're getting beat up to all pulp. It's shot very, very nicely. And I know that's not necessarily specific to the sport, how everything is represented in the sport, but the wide shots, I believe, definitely make me feel, and I cannot definitely understand now with your story as a child, as you're sitting there watching it in the movie theater, why it would feel so real on the day of Christmas. Here's this fight, and it looked just like anything that we would have watched on CBS or ABC with our parents on Friday night fight night.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that as far as the contact and how things looked. I think that, though, there is a large amount of fiction in how the sport is portrayed. And I think that what I mean by that is, let's talk about the Apollo Creed fight.
Yeah.
So
let's do that.
Fight would have gotten stopped after the third punch. There's
Absolutely.
no way. There's no way they would let it continue. And even if you believe that that a referee would allow that to continue, because that is a thing of where there is definitely in boxing where sometimes referees will let fighters go a little bit longer if they've known to been able to take punishment and weather that storm and keep going. Apollo Creed, with his record, I'm sure would have been in that form, would have been in that category. But also, they only allow that when there's a title on the line. You know, when it's just a regular fight, even if there was an exhibition, which doesn't even count as a professional record, but then when it's it's an exhibition or just even a regular fight, they don't let them go that long. That because if it's a title, that's kind of like we'll let you. Effectively, the term is to go out on your shield, and going out on your shield means like we're gonna let you keep going until he knocks you out, and that's fine. And that happens. But in this fight, after about the third punch, it's clear he's got nothing for him. And then the end of even if you let things go a bit longer, the end of that first round, it is painfully obvious that let me rephrase that. It is painfully obvious because Apollo Creed is standing up, leaning up against the ropes with his hands down, just taking punches to the face.
Yeah, he can't defend himself.
Exactly. He cannot. And in boxing, in that scenario, that is a knockdown. You would pull Drago off and you would start counting because the ropes were literally the only thing holding him up. So otherwise he would have just, fallen down and collapsed down. And so in that whole scenario, even if, which is a big if, any referee would have let the fight go that far, that's over after that round. Like they would look at him walking out of the corner and we're just done. There's no sane way that they would do that round. He would sit down in that corner for a minute and then they'd be like, oh yeah, come on back out.
Yeah. Oh, you got this, champ.
You got this. Yeah. So, and that is the thing with now. I think this is a fair criticism of really all the Rocky movies. The visuals of the fights and everything are great, but there is
the technicality of it.
The technicality of it. Like there's, especially in 4, and I can probably find it in some of the 3 and 2 as well, where it's like, these fights would not have allowed these fights to continue.
Right.
And so the Apollo Creed one is the most egregious one. But even in the final fight, there's scenes where when Drago starts knocking him down over and over again, or even the stuff they let him do that's illegal, where Rocky goes down, the referee doesn't even count, and then Drago runs across the ring and punches him again. It's like that wouldn't happen. Or the whole like, okay, you knocked you down, you standing 8 count, okay, get up, dust your gloves, bam, you're down to one more punch. The referee be like, okay, you're done.
You're done. Yep.
It's like they're not going to let you get back up, and so it's like, there's that aspect of it where these fights just go way too long for any sort of believability, but you juxtapose that with, it's Rocky. It's so much fun. Who cares? Let it go.
Right. You have to have the over the top dramatics of it.
Yeah.
To definitely sell the story of, the little guy beating the big guy, or any of the political aspects of it that you could throw out there, that, Russia was this menacing power, just like Drago, and we got to come in and teach him a lesson somehow, some way. It's just, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Because I was just looking at it more of, the visual aspects. It's beautiful, the way that it's shot, because it's very much like a boxing, but yeah, the technicalities of these things are just over the top, and some of the punches are even crazy and just wildish, and just sitting there. Not many fighters are like, come on, punch me harder in the face. It does happen. I've seen it, but it's not like over the top the way that these two are going at it.
Yes. And that is there's a part of this where I think that Rocky is deservedly, the whole Rocky franchise, deservedly greatest boxing, greatest grossing boxing franchise ever, greatest boxing movies, all the different accolades it gets for it, especially the first Rocky for what it was really doing. But then the one thing about these movies that I do as a boxing fan, although now I will admit I'm much more to the MMA than boxing, but as a boxing fan, it is a thing of where it's like, yeah, this the boxing itself is unrealistic. I understand that even the premise of first fights. Now, granted, the first one was inspired by an actual event that occurred. So yeah, it was improbable, but this happened in real life, so we'll go with it. The other two, with 2 and 3, it all gets realistic, and then in 4, you're right. There's the whole idea of like, okay, so you have a Russian guy that comes over, he gets the next champ, he kills the guy, and then they fight again later, right? But alongside of all of that, part of the ridiculousness in the terms of the business world of what it's portraying with boxing, but these fights would be allowed to continue and they'd be allowed to be this way technically. That to me has, while it always has kind of bothered me a bit, it really has never bothered me enough to remove my enjoyment of it. But
I can't watch it.
But I do think that if you're discussing how they're doing, it's like, well, yeah, this is it's a bit far and these fights would have been stopped. So even with all of that with the boxing, do you think that this movie could be made with another sport?
No, I don't think so at all. Sure, one could probably argue, you could probably throw in UFC, maybe kickboxing or something like that. I don't know. Maybe the closest thing to it, and it's a stretch, it's like a karate, like a Karate Kid, right? It's just.
Well, that was a legal kick in the face,
right? Sweep the leg, Johnny. Yeah, I don't think I would find it as enjoyable, and I don't know if I'm saying that because I'm just biased to the storyline of this being a boxing storyline. That's the vehicle of the sport. Yeah, I just don't think I would. For me, no, it has to stay boxing. Have you seen any of the new ones like Creed or Apollo or?
Yes, I've seen all the Creed movies. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think?
There's no Apollo. There's just Creed,
not
the Creed
Apollo.
movies. Yeah, Creed 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of those?
I think that, and I guess where it would relate to this is that, Creed 2 is the obvious sequel to this movie. And Creed 2 humanizes the Drago character in a way that this movie never did. And so there's a lot, that part of it I like as far as what they've done with the sequel. But what I think of those movies is, first off, Michael B. Jordan is great. He's amazing. Yes. The first one is really, really good. It was a really great imaginative way to bring this back. They did a good job of washing over why the character of Adonis Creed was not in any of the Rocky movies, and they make that work. And then from there, going from the first Creed movie and then jumping straight to, well, let's make like a Rocky 4 sequel with Creed 2, I thought was a genius stroke. And then the third one is fine. It's a good movie. It works ish. But the problem that Creed has, which is the similar problem that these Rocky movies had, was how to deal with these characters when they're on top. The Creed is really kind of an underdog character. Really, so is Rocky, and they're always the underdog that is trying to come up to whatever. And so in Creed 3, which is a similar problem they had in the Rocky, which is I think why they pivoted to the Rocky movie that I won't even discuss, is that there is not a good template that they had or a way that they knew what to do with. And I'm saying they, not just like Sylvester Stallone and his people, but even the people that were making Creed, and all of them, they were great, but they don't know what to do with these characters when they're on top. And how do you make that, how do you make defending as engrossing or as entertaining as the climb?
Right. Yeah, no, because otherwise it's always going to be something similar to Rocky 4, like you're saying. It's always going to end up being you're at the top, so we have to have somebody that's bigger, better, faster, or whatever the case may be, a different opponent that's going to strike fear into everybody else, and the belief of, oh, my dear champion is going to have to overcome something and real big adversity and become the champion at the end of it. Yeah, that's a very good point with these types of franchises, that once you get to the top, now what?
Really, at that point, you are really discussing, I think, a failure of sports movies as a whole. And I guess failure isn't the right term, but it is the thing. The thing with sports movies, almost universally, not universally, but almost universally, is it is always about the team or the person or whatever that is should not make it, is unexpected to make it, not going to do it, whatever. Like there's some reason why. Every reason is that they shouldn't be able to achieve whatever the thing is that they achieve at the end. And that is the underdog story that we all just love.
Right. I think there's a lot of truth to that, just probably in just humanity. You know, you either want to be that person who is at the top. So from a movie standpoint, you can't build a storyline that just shows, here, let me introduce you into these characters that are already on the top and they're defending all these other guys and just swatting them away like flies. That's not an exciting storyline. You can't just put yourself there and be like, hey, this is relatable. But what's relatable is it is that buildup and the wonderment and some of the, like it's almost like a fairy tale to some degree of how do I get from to where he or she is at the top. That's almost more relatable than just jumping from where I'm at today to, boy, I really inspire to be Tiger Woods, or I inspire to be Tom Brady, or whomever, and boom, you're there. It's really hard to just put yourself there in that. At least for me, it would be a tough storyline to just instantly become relatable to.
There is a movie called Tyson. It came out in 1995, and it was starred Michael J. White, who played Tyson. And in the movie about Tyson, the movie starts with he's young, and he's a young ne'er-do-well. Customato finds him, gets a hold of him, starts training him, helps him out and everything like that. He gets to amateurs, does really well. He rises through the ranks, and then they show it when he finally fights, Trevor Burbick for the world boxing WBC heavyweight championship. And at 20 years of age, he wins, become the youngest champion, right? Then with this movie, basically at that point, skips over most of all of those years of everybody loving when Tyson was just the man destroying everybody. Goes straight to Customato dying, he's then upset, and then it jumps to the Michael Spinks fight, which now the Michael Spinks fight definitely is one of his greatest fights. It is the most memorable fight of his career, sure. Jumps right to that. He does that fight, and that's great. And then skips over that he actually defends the title quite a few more times, and then Buster Douglas happens, right? Although maybe he only defended it between that maybe once or twice, but he defended it a couple of times, and then jumps to Buster Douglas happens, which basically is saying that we've taken this life of, especially when you think about Mike Tyson in his prime, you think about, we wanted the pay-per-view and we expected it to last 90 seconds. If a Mike Tyson fight went to the second round, you were like, what happened? You're like, no, I paid my good money to watch this dude knock somebody out in 90 seconds. That's what I'm here for, and so you took the thing of where it's like, well, we've done a movie about someone whose reputation is the baddest man on the planet. He is, what he was with Mike Tyson and all that. And in the movie form, the part of the movie where he is the champ and he is defending is skipped. It's just straight to where are the points of adversity of where either he achieved more than we thought or he goes down.
See, and I haven't seen that. So now I want to.
Oh, it's a very good movie.
Okay.
It is a very good movie about Mike Tyson. But that is the thing, and I think that is the issue that we find a lot with sports movies is. You don't want to see someone be great. You only want to see them become great.
Right. Because, are you going to watch a 90-minute movie about somebody just succeeding? And then what's their story arc going to be? The failure at the end, and then they rebuild themselves to be back to what they were? Or are you just going to continue to watch them succeed?
Does it have to be? Do you think someone could make a good movie about someone who is like a fighter that is defending their title? So like let's take Mike Tyson out of it and let's take someone like Larry Holmes or even let's take Larry Holmes. Larry Holmes is a great example, and Muhammad Ali might even be a better one, right? Mm-hmm. Muhammad Ali wasn't bigger than a lot of the guys that he fought, but he did find ways to win. And so could you
that would be a good story.
Do you think you could create a story that is in effect showing what it took for him to get himself to the places he had to get to in order to win?
Yeah, for something like that. Yeah, no, I could see a good storyline built around that kind of fight to fight adversity throughout a storied career like that. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That would actually be a pretty good movie. And I'm sure there maybe there is something out there already, and I just hadn't watched it. But
Maybe, but
maybe.
yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to remember what the original question was you had that got us to this tangent. Oh, the Creed movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Creed movies. Yeah, so then I guess let me turn all that back around on you. What did you think of the Creed movies?
I've only seen the first one and a portion of the second one just because I watched them on a flight. But I enjoyed them. I really liked it, and it actually made me want to go back and rewatch some of the Rocky stuff, which inadvertently we're doing because of our podcast, which is great. But yeah, I would love to be able to have the concentrated time of just sitting down and watching everything from Rocky to the Creeds and just seeing how everything is tied back into each other as it refers to the Creed and whatnot, and then just seeing how the story just continues to build up, and just refreshing my whole thoughts on all these movies. But then bringing in the whole Creed thing is great. I liked it, the first and the second one, for what I've seen.
Man, Jim, it is always great to talk about movies with you. If you enjoy the show and are willing to support us, please become a supporting member at thenextreel.com/join. For only $5 a month, you will gain members-only access to bonus show content for this and many other shows in the Next Reel family of film podcasts. Want to continue the conversation about this or any other sports movie? We invite you to join us on our Discord page, which is linked in the show notes. Like, rate, listen, and most importantly, share this podcast with anyone you know that loves sports and movies.